we prepare for a PM interview so that we can qualify, so that we can check all the boxes that a PM interviewer is looking for. And the next thing, briefly, we'll talk about some common pitfalls where people struggle with, where people at times feel directionless, etc. And questions. Now, questions is not something that is covered at the last. It is something that we will keep pausing and keep taking questions, right? So before that, I'll just skip this part for in interest of time, but I just want to you know respect your time further, like for all the people, for all the 100 200 people who are sitting there and continuing with this, investing this time. I just want you guys to know, why am I qualified to take this masterclass and what do I want in return. I'm extremely grateful that I joined Flipkart as the first company that I joined when I graduated from IIT BHU as a biochemical engineer. um, I was with Flipkart for 3.5 years. During my time there, I started with business finance and then I moved to business analytics. Now, business analytics is a role in Flipkart which caters to both the product as well as the business team. In both of these roles, I was exposed to very high caliber product managers across all the teams that I worked with. And during this, I interacted with a bunch of people who from whom I got to know that uh, there is product hiring that is happening in IITs. Flipkart is doing that, but they're not going to IIT BHU. They were also going to BITS Pilani, BITS Goa, etc., but they were still not coming to IIT BHU. And I was curious, why is it happening? And I got in touch with the team that was responsible for hiring, and they did not have any answer. They said, we don't have anybody from IIT BHU in our product team, hence we don't go there because we don't have anyone to coordinate. And to me, that was a chicken egg problem. Like, you can't really have anybody if you don't go ahead and hire. So I said, I'll coordinate. What do you need? And I coordinated. I became the bridge. And when we first came to IIT BHU, that was 2017 October. We had a talk in ABLT4, and we had a turn up of 626 people. Did not expect that. Did not expect. We did IIT Delhi and Kanpur before that. We had a good amount of people who were attending these talks there as well. And both of these three campuses like were covered by two directors of product. So I got a lot of time to interact with them, understand from them. One of them has recently joined ShareChat as their chief product officer. His name is Amit Z. The other one is still a senior product person, product leader at Flipkart. His name is Ankit Khurana. And I have been extremely lucky and grateful for that I got to interact with a lot of product people across Flipkart and beyond. In Zilingo, I joined as the third product manager, and I learned a great deal from Dhruv Kapoor, who is the CTO co-founder. Currently, Zilingo is in the news for not so good reasons, but I'm grateful that I really got to learn a lot from him. And after that, I joined Urban Company. The person who hired me, Sachin Gupta, has his own startup. He's the CEO of Probo. So I'm really grateful that I got to touch upon approaches of different PMs. There is another person that I want to call out here, which is Balaji Chandran, who literally mentored me a lot during my Flipkart time when I was trying to break into product management. And the only thing that I want in return is that whenever you have a chance to uplift someone in life, with whatever capability, in whatever capacity you can, if you can guide a junior, if you can mentor someone, if you can just hear someone out if they're going through tough times, show up, pay it forward. If I'm showing up for you guys today, make sure that you keep this chain running and keep showing up. All right, so at 5:30 now, we will start this. Some ground rules. Keep yourself on mute so that I see that the hosts have imposed. Keep your cameras on if you can, because I really would like to interact with you guys. I have another screen on just so that I can see faces, but I won't be able to if you guys keep your cameras off. But it's optional again, so can't really help if you don't want to. Participate via chat. When you see the slides of this color, you'll see slides of yellow color and this green color. Whenever you see, this is at the stage where I'll take a pause and I want you guys to interact. And because I can't see the chat myself, I'll rely upon Aradhna and a bunch of other volunteers who are making it happen today to be able to translate whatever you guys are communicating. unmute when prompted if you're there, and through chat ask questions. And whenever we take a pause to ask questions for questions, do take out the time to just shed all your inhibitions, shed all the judgment, etc., from your peers, seniors, juniors, mentors, everyone, and ask questions. Do not care about judgment. Nobody would remember that. And what you would take in life is an answered question is better than a question that you're sitting on. All right. So what is product management? Like we spoke, the fundamental question is what is a product in the first place? And I'll take a pause here. Again, this is a green colored slide. Can you guys please just type in what do you understand? What is a product? What do you understand by product? And I would request Radna if you can translate whatever people are responding. Please interact. It's really, really important for me. Otherwise, I won't be able to add as much value to you guys.
Okay, guys, please.
I can't see the chat, so you can make stuff up if people are not
Okay,
interacting. I
okay.
highly recommend if you guys interact.
Okay. An object or service provided by company to customer.
An object or service, beautiful answer. Service provided from a company to a customer. Nobody else has a thought on what a product is. It's
A
quite sad.
commodity or service that a company sells.
Say that again.
Something which can a commodity or service that company sells. Product is something people use. Anything that can be placed in marketplace and result of some raw material, a product made of consumption for customer.
Beautiful.
Something that adds value to customer.
That is something that is very important as well. Something that adds value to customer. A product or a service or an object that can help people. These are like some interesting answers, and all of these answers are correct to some extent, and there is probably no one right answer. So I'll just won't take like a longer pause there. You guys can think about it. In my understanding, it is an experience or a service that solves a user pain point and delivers a better value. Now, an experience or a service experience can be in the form of an object as well. As an example, we talk about automobiles, right? A bicycle is a product. A car is a product. A bank service is a product again. Now, bank services were outdated, or bank services became a little irrelevant when some of the mobile wallets came in. Paytm wallet came in, and they said that we don't need to interact with bank every time we want to do a transaction. Let's make it simple. Let's make people load up money in their wallet from their bank accounts, and then we can just simply use our wallet and our advanced technology to interact, which will be much faster and not as as redundant or as much resistant in terms of the transaction flow. So a lot of wallets came up, and somebody then came and said that, hey, we don't even need wallet. Like, why do we need to keep our money in someone else's account to be able to make things simple? Why not just make the transactions through bank accounts really, really simple? And that was the birth of UPI, which is built on the same tech infrastructure which our IMPC payments works on, IMPS payments works on, which is NPCI pura and the entire pipeline. Um, another another way to look at any of our cab booking, bus booking, flight booking, all of these are products. These are all digital products. When we talk of physical products, a mobile phone, a laptop, all of these are products. Now, can we say that a mobile phone is a product itself? It has 10 apps. All of these are individual products, and each app, for example, Paytm has Paytm Money, Paytm, which is a different app. Paytm has bill payments, which is in the same app. Paytm has Paytm Wallet, FastTag. Paytm has movie booking, bus booking. All of that. Are all of these independent products, or it is just a one single product? Well, there is no one definition. You can define it any way you want. You can slice it down and it can still be products. So a Paytm bus booking in itself is a product in itself, right? So you can classify it any way you want, but at the core, there is a user pain point which is being solved. And through solving that, we are delivering a value, right? So this is what is a product in our understanding. Now, from here, let's move on to some bad products, right? So I want you to think of some bad products. We've spoken about some products. What would be some bad products? Some things that did not feel like a good experience, something that you feel did not add any value, right? So please interact with chat, and I'll wait for for Aradhana to help me translate chat again. At least someone is interacting with me.
Yeah, people can interact. I have unmuted, I have given them
Oh
access.
yeah, right. So if anybody wants to unmute, unmute and go ahead, share some examples of bad product or add it in the chat if you can.
Okay, someone typed Internet Explorer, tobacco.
Internet Explorer was a very interesting product. Yes. Um,
Hike, Paytm Mall.
Paytm Mall is a bad product. Hike is a bad product. Now, people who have answered these, while the other people continue to think what are bad products, I want you to think on why do you think these are bad products? Let's go back to the first one. The first one was
Internet
the first Internet Explorer. Now, why do we think it's a bad product?
Pratik Ray said that. Can you explain why do you think it's bad?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I believe that Internet Explorer was not that good a product because it the interface was not that engaging and it took a lot of time to load, which would in turn reduce the retention.
Right. So there are interesting things that you've mentioned, Pratik, that it was not as interactive, and it took a lot of time to load anything, which in turn reduced retention. So retention, uh, being a jazz word, I'll park that for now. Bad interaction. You mentioned it was not as interactive. So my understanding of that, and I'm in interest of time, I'm not going into deeper discussion with you for now. But thank you for interacting. Now, my understanding of lesser interactive or not as interactive would be that it is not as intuitive to the user. It is not very simple to use. We are unable to figure out where things are. Uh, but do you know what was the experience before Internet Explorer came in? How would people interact with internet before Internet Explorer was there? I don't remember. Were there other browsers when it came in, or was there Netscape? I'm not sure. No, I don't think you guys would know either because you're from a different generation. Right. So some other bad products. Somebody mentioned Hike. Hike was a chat platform. It probably still is alive, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
Why do we feel Hike is bad product?
Ike's target audience was very small. For that 18 to 24 years of age, that group, it usually targeted using it that stickers and all. So I think its target audience was small. Yes, it was. I had used Hike. It used to provide more privacy than WhatsApp these days, but still, its target audience was small. I used to use
How,
in my class 9, 10,
how
but now I
target?
have moved on.
Sorry to interrupt you, Aritra. How does target audience hurt you? I mean, that is for them to think of. Like if you're getting a chat product, which you mentioned was better at privacy than WhatsApp, what was wrong?
I mean, as I mean, as for as according to my understanding, that as I matured enough, all my friends and all my contacts shifted to WhatsApp only, and so I had nothing. I had no use of Hike at after college or after school. So
Beautiful.
I
So one thing that I might take away from this is that a chat platform needs to have other people so that you can chat with them. If nobody else is there, you can't just sit there alone and type message to yourself. That will be very sad if somebody does that. Amazing. What was the third example somebody mentioned?
ATM on.
Paytm Mall. Paytm Mall. I won't go deeper there. Except it is not a very bad. It's not a very good product. Can we think of some physical products which we feel are or were bad products? Some things that we've used back in the
Yeah,
past.
so there are a few suggestions there. Horlicks, Nano.
Horlicks,
There is, yeah,
Horlicks.
and then there's Nano.
Hi, Pulkit.
Hi.
Someone mentioned tobacco products.
Yeah,
Sorry?
tobacco product. Someone mentioned tobacco products as well.
Tobacco products. Okay.
Hi, Pulkit, Adish here.
Hi, Adish. Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So considering a physical product, I would want to say like Volkswagen Polo can be a very, uh, specified niche example for the same.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being that in the Indian market, people are usually used to have the indicator on the right side of the steering wheel, and the you know
I get what you're saying. Let
yeah,
me
so it's
translate
on the
for
left. Yeah,
everyone here. So Volkswagen Polo is a German car,
yeah.
Volkswagen being the company. When they moved to India, like even Ford did initially, they moved from a left-hand drive to a right-hand drive. In India, the driver in a car is sitting on the right-hand side. Now, what they did not switch, and what Ford also did not switch early on was, now when you're on a right-hand drive, your left hand is engaged with the gear, and right hand is free to engage with the steering wheel. Now, when you have to use an indicator, if indicator is on the same side as the gear lever, the same hand has to be engaged to use both of them. Most of the times, if we are turning, we might need to switch the gears down or switch the gears. So having both of these at the same side is a bad experience. Uh, Volkswagen did not switch it on the right side. Ford did not do that early on either. Now Ford did it, but now Ford has exited the market in the first place. But that is a that part of the product is bad, is what Adish was mentioning. Uh, Another example of bad products, somebody was mentioning tobacco products. Now, tobacco products, in terms of health effects, I would be open to question that they're bad products. But is apart from health benefits, like health risks, are there any other reasons why the person who mentioned tobacco products are bad products? Um, why are they bad? Or even Horlicks, somebody mentioned Horlicks again for health, uh, the hidden benefits of health or the hidden implications of consuming Horlicks on health. Apart from that, why do you feel these are bad products? If you want to interact quickly, otherwise we'll move on. Do you guys remember TV remotes, like the old TV remotes, which will have all the digits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 0, and then channel switches, volume switches, and then a bunch of other features which I don't remember using at all? To now smartphone, smart TV, or what are these called? The devices that are installed with Airtel Extreme or JioFiber, etc. I forget what we call them. So the remotes with them are super simple. They have just a few buttons to navigate, and everything on the screen is interactive because they are like slightly smarter. So the remotes have now simplified. Initially, they had a lot of things which were probably not as usable, but they didn't have any other place to keep them, and that's why they had that. Um, okay, let's move on to what is product management. Again, would love for you guys to interact quickly. What is product management according to you? Now we understand the product, what it is. What is product management? I still can't see the chat, so feel free to unmute yourself, or if you see anything on the chat, any of the hosts, I would request you to please unmute yourself and translate that for me.
Sir, I would like to say product management is something which takes into developing and managing a product, all the planning that goes behind it, and the business and everything. That's product management.
Beautiful. So all the planning or everything, anything and everything that takes to build a product and manage a product qualifies as under product management. That's a good answer. Yes, Mr. Shyam,
Yes.
raise hand. Please go ahead. Uh, Mr. Shyansh Single, if you can, or anybody else, if they want to unmute yourself, go ahead, quickly shoot.
Yeah, so we have four more in the chat. So there is upgrading and spreading your product according to the market.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's management of the dynamics of product design, target, scale, and sale. Uh, there is updating product features to make it easier and better for the consumer to use. to introduce features in a product according to requirements of the customer, and CEO for the product.
CEO for the product,
Yeah.
requirements for the customer, building features, a bunch of these terms. Beautiful. Thanks for interacting. Now, this is all of these are right answers to some extent, but most of them used some heavy word. Like a lot of these used product in the definition. A lot of these things used product management or features. Some of them used customers. So one was CEO of the product, which is there is one way to explain it through which it is the right definition. There is another way to look at it. We might say that somebody can question that it doesn't make sense. Let's not get into those discussions, but try to understand what is product management at the core, right? So as per my understanding, product management is nothing but solving problems in a structured way at scale, right? Now, all of these examples that we looked at, any product that we can just even go back. We went two back, right? So all the automobiles, our products, the people who are managing those products, like initially started solving problems, right? So Henry Ford is known to have said that if I would ask people what they want, they would tell me that they want faster horses. So what they did is they went to the user, tried to understand what they want, and from that noise of what people want, they were able to extract the real problems. The real problem is people want to commute faster. They want to go from place A to place B faster, or send some stuff from place A to place B faster, which is where the invention of car happened, right? So anything that is solving our problem, the people who are working on that are problem solvers. Structured problem solvers are product managers. There is another important element that I mentioned there is scale element, right? So now what do I mean by scale, right? Let's say that there is uh, a conference happening in college, or college fests are happening, right? Um, I used to work with Technics, and I'll just take a moment of pause to again express my gratitude for the organization that I learned so much. And there are words are not enough for me to explain how immensely thankful I am that I was a part of Technics throughout my college life. I was also, I have volunteered for Kashi Yatra, for Sports Fest in Spardha. It used to be called Spardha early on in my college life, but Robotics Club and Technics are places where I've learned the most. Now, we used to have a lot of delegates that would come in a lot. When I say delegates, people who you would consider as guests. So now they might be here for panel discussion. They might be here for talks. We had people from CERN, NASA coming in and delivering talks. Now, for all of these people, we used to have cabs, right? We used to have a cab vendor who used to give us say 15, 20 cabs, whatever our requirements be. And we used to have a person from the team who would manage those cabs, like so that we can optimize our problem statement being so that we can reduce our cost, right? So we would look at their schedules. When is the person coming in? What time is this cab getting free? We'll make sure that there is some buffer in the middle. So that person effectively solving a problem, and they're able to do it for 10 delegates. If there are more, we might need two people to coordinate and take care of that. We might be able to do it even for 100 people by ourselves. But let's say that if instead of 100 there are 1,000 guests, like probably during placements, right? There are so many people coming from different companies, especially in the first week to BHU, to our BHU campus, that we might not be able to manage it. Like if we want to manage it, then it'll take a bigger team for us to be able to manage that. Uh, if there is 1,000 users, 100,000 users, 1 million users, 10 million users, now the scale increases. As the scale increases, there is immense complexity that gets added to the system. Now, what an Uber does, or what an Ola does, is effectively solve the same problem, which is to map a user to a driver. The user effectively needs a cab at that point in time to go from place A to place B, uh, and cab driver would look forward to have a rider who would want to go from place A to place B and pay money for it, right? So complexity is immense when the scale comes in. Now think of Netflix. Before Netflix happened, before Netflix phenomenon, as big files were not required to be shared. Like they were required to be shared, but there was no other way to share them at that scale. Torrent was one way that large files were shared across the network, but you could not consume the torrent file before it is fully downloaded, or you could consume, but it'll throw some issues in between. It could even corrupt the file at some point. Now, but Netflix had to solve this problem that we have to stream these movies, these TV shows, etc., at across places, across the countries, across the continents, and we want to have a few proposition, the value proposition that we cannot say that, hey, there is a lot of traffic on Netflix, so you will get to see this movie tomorrow. It will still have to happen. Like as a user, my expectation is that if I'm logging on to a platform for a content platform, if I'm searching for a movie, I have found the movie and I want to watch the movie, it should load within a few seconds. There should be minimum latency. When I say latency, I mean that there should be minimum lag. And if there is a lot of lag, it is not a very good customer experience. So there is immense complexity that comes with scale. Now, people who work on solving these problems at scale in a structured way are product managers. If I have to answer this question, if somebody asks me that what is it that interviewers are looking for uh, in product management interviews, and I've asked this question to a lot of people within Flipkart, a lot of people uh, outside Flipkart from my network of product managers across the country, and different people have different answers. Uh, so that is a flavor of how we do user research. We speak to a lot of users and we realize that different people have different answers. Now, what we have to do is to from all the different sort of divergent answers, we have to converge them and arrive at something which is meaningful and converged, as in condensed into something. So my understanding of this was that people are looking for structured problem solving at scale, right? So let's go ahead. Before I pause to take questions, and I'll do that very soon. Um, there are two core tenets of there. Different people define it again in different ways. My way of looking at is that there are two core tenets of product management. One is first principles thinking, and second is simple, right? Now, first principle thinking, I will take a quick pause here to understand from you if you guys understand this term. If any of you would want to take pause and like unmute yourself and explain what do you understand by first principles thinking? Yes, no. If anybody is
In
typing,
my
yes, go
sir,
ahead.
am I audible?
Yes, you
So,
are.
in my opinion, the first principle thinking actually means that thinking of a problem at its very core. Like if you have a statement, if you have a problem, then think it. So why is it happening? If we have some answer to it, then again put a why after it to think it at a much deeper level about it,
Beautiful.
and
Go ahead, go
and
ahead.
go on till you find the actual core of the problem.
Right. So the way I think Mr. Pallav defined it is we are trying to get to the core of the problem, and that is first principles thinking. To do that, he shared that we keep asking why and keep stripping away layers after layers after layer until we get to the core problem. That is one lens on what first principles thinking means. Anybody else wants to take a stab on what that means?
There's one definition in the chat, thinking from the point of view of a customer.
Thinking from the point of view of a customer is first principles thinking. So I'll sort of contradict this. Thinking from a customer point of view would be customer centricity or customer empathy or just empathy. First principles is something else, and as much as empathy is important, first principles, we're trying to focus here on first principles, and we'll get to empathy when we get there. But first principles thinking. So there are multiple definitions of first principle thinking. You can Google it, you can try and understand. But let's work with an example. Let's say that it's a beautiful example, actually, that in the last few years, right? Um, when I had joined the college back in 2010, in 2010, there was no techniques that happened. For some administrative reasons, there was no event that happened before I joined in. So it happens generally in the even semester, so which is the second semester or like any of the even semesters for anybody. So people who had been in second year when I joined in had not seen techniques in their first year. And similarly, people who were in fourth year did not have techniques in their fourth year, and so on. So 2010 did not have a techniques event, and 2011 onwards it restarted again. Similar thing happened. 2019 we had an event. 2020 we had techniques, and 2021 I don't think 2021 I don't think there was techniques because of COVID lockdowns, and you were probably not operating from college, and even if you were, there was no festival. And some of these events, some of these college activities are probably stopped now or not in the same shape and form they were in. Probably there was a digital event that happened. Some workshops, some events, some interactions, some panel discussions could have happened, right? So let's assume a scenario, hopefully soon, that we all go back to campus and start our regular lives. And we have to restart some of these activities that we feel are valuable to the student community, right? So let's take an example of techniques. Let's start that if we have to reconduct techniques again, what will it take for us to reconduct, like to start that event again, right? That is starting from scratch, right? A blank drawing board, a blank screen, a blank slate is a first principles thinking. So thinking of the core of the problem, we can think that, okay, if I want to conduct techniques, what do I mean by what we want to conduct techniques? Okay, I want to conduct some events, I want to conduct some guest talks, I want to conduct some panel discussions, some informal events, some pro nights, which is like so that we can chill in the night after the day hectic days are over. Uh, so now to be able to do each of these things, we will then go to the next level that, okay, in our events, there are a lot of people who would be participating from our college as well as their colleges, right? So we have to have people over. Now, if you're having people, so we keep thinking and solving this, breaking it down into multiple chunks, trying to map that, okay, we will probably have such a team. So what we need to do would define what sort of team do we need and what sort of technology do we need to run that show, right? So in terms of technology, as technology evolved, we had WhatsApp. We did not have WhatsApp when we started off. We used to have feature phones and used to work with SMS, etc. So the idea is that we strip down everything and we strip the layers, like somebody mentioned, right? So going at the core of the problem, this is what we are still doing, but we are sort of breaking it down and thinking from scratch, right? So when we started this, we said that what is product management? Before we answer that, we first need to answer what is a product. That is a more fundamental question to answer, right? So that is first principles thinking. Um, when we spoke of example that somebody asked that why do we need to keep money in an external wallet to be able to make a transaction? Why can't we make it more seamless through the bank itself? So that is first principles thinking. We can, if we don't think from first principles perspective, we can keep optimizing mobile wallets. We can keep removing the any friction points if there are, any pain points if there are, and keep optimizing over there. But to be able to break things down and reinvent from scratch, you require first principles thinking. Another example of first principles thinking is what Elon Musk did with the automobile industry. People have spent so many years, right, in optimizing the fuel engines, optimizing the fuel efficiency of the engines, getting the best out of it, optimizing for less pollutants as an exhaust from engines, etc., etc. Elon Musk said, what do we need? We need energy to be able to, run our automobiles. Why can't we use electricity when electricity in their ecosystem had ample access? What are the problems which are why we can't use electricity? The charging point, battery power, backup, etc., 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 etc. A bunch of problems came in. And then they thought of solving these. Can we solve that? So that is first principles thinking, right? The second core tenet, and tenet is nothing but core pillar. You can think of a core pillar. Probably not everyone would be comfortable with that word. I wasn't until a few years back. So stripping that complexity away. The second core tenet is simplicity, right? So what do I mean by simple? Um, Now, simple is different from simplistic, and complexity is another dimension itself, right? So let me take an example and try to explain it in a little bit detail. Now, uh, I don't know if you guys have used or seen feature phones or like the candy phones that we used to have before we had smartphones. Uh, we still do have SMS in our phones, but it's not like the same SMS that we used to have. In earlier old phones, the SMS were in the order we are receiving them. So if I received an SMS from say Ayush here, It is Ayush at 4 p.m. Then say Pallav sent me a message at 4:50. Then Pallav's message would be there. Then Ayush again sent me a message at say 5:15. Right. So Ayush's message would be after Pallav's. So it would just be first in, first out sort of logbook of SMS. There is no interrelation. There is no correlation of if Ayush has sent me any message in past, any conversation view, nothing. So that was super, super simplistic. Right. Um, is it good? It is simple. It is good. Yes. Is it useful? It is also useful. It did make our lives easier before we could only talk on phone calls, and now we had SMS, or we needed another device for sending messages, which was pager devices, if you guys are aware of, right? So um, apart from apart from that, let me think. There was an app called Yo. The Yo app had a feature that you can see your friends like WhatsApp, and you can select them to send a Yo. You don't have to draft the message. There is a message that gets sent Yo. Do you think it's a useful product? Is it a good product? Is it bad? And it did get a lot of funding. It did get a lot of traction. People are sending Yos to each other. It became a phenomenon in the Silicon Valley, I think, where it emerged. But to my understanding, it is a simplistic product. It does solve a problem, and SMS was also a simplistic product. It does solve a problem, but there are still some problem statements. Now, do I mean that a good product, which is simple, would not have pain points? No, I don't mean that. Uh, there is another product that Google came out with called Google Wave, right? So now think of a Gmail sort of interface for a chat box, and your screen would be split into like two vertical columns. Basically, one is like the group of people, the names of the people or the groups which you could click on, and on the second window there is like the everything that would open up. It at least grouped some conversations which were like separate early on in the SMS world. There used to be these chat messengers, Yahoo chat messenger, Rediff chat messengers, etc., etc. And instant messengers was a market in itself at some point. In fact, Paytm started off as even if you transact with Paytm, you would see 197 communications private limit. 197 used to be a chat platform in India, and so that's how old Vijay Shekhar has been solving problems in India. But the idea is that these products were complex to use. It was not as intuitive, and with time they lost relevance and they died off. Right now, when we think of WhatsApp, WhatsApp came in and remarkably captured a lot of market. That was because it was simple. Did it have so it did solve all the pain points that we would want it to solve? Not early on. It did not have, say, picture sharing. It did not have audio calls, video calls, etc. It was just a chat app, and the chat app was simply in a conversational manner. I could chat with anyone, and then there were groups that we can chat with a group of people in a conversational manner, and the group history or the chat history is simple to navigate and work with. That is as simple as that. um, Simplicity is again very important when we think of product thinking. And there is another aspect that somebody mentioned, which is customer empathy or user centricity, right? So that is extremely, extremely important as well. And I believe it is a prerequisite of any product thinking, right? When I mean prerequisite, it is as simple as if we are doing, say, if you're learning integration, we need to know board mass, we need to know plus minus algebra, basic algebra, etc., before we can move on to do calculus, right? So it is a prerequisite. We need to have that. Otherwise, we are just trying to do something which we are probably not fully capable of. But the beauty is that all of these things, some of these things might be intuitive to some people. Some people are empathetic since childhood. Some people uh, you know, uh, are more tuned into other people's emotions, are able to capture that easily. Some people have first principles approach since childhood because they used to play around and were curious to open things and see how things work. And uh, some people might have this knack for simplicity, like Steve Jobs had this knack for simplicity intuitively. But all of these skills are learnable skills, coachable skills. We can coach ourselves on these skills and develop an attitude like we need to solve problems in a structured way. None of that needs to be that, okay, I don't know this from childhood, so probably not the right thing for me, etc., etc. Now, design thinking, I have just mentioned a keyword over here. I'll just briefly cover that. Uh, so what do I mean by design thinking? Like we have thinking frameworks for different requirements, right? We have a lean thinking, lean operations framework. We have a Six Sigma framework, right? So all of these are frameworks which are optimized for operations. Now, lean operations, some of the mechanical engineers here might have read of it. Some of the people who have some courses in industrial engineering or even chemical engineering might have come across this. Was that in the industrial world, right? So when I talk of industrial world, in the world of when the industrial revolution was at the core of driving the economy, we needed to optimize every cost that we are incurring, right? So if I got the raw material 2 days back and it is just lying in my warehouse before it can actually get consumed, it is a waste of my time, like a warehouse space for 2 days. It's a cost, right? So to optimize all of these, a lean thinking framework came in, and which has a certain set of principles, which has a certain set of approach. It is a framework. It's like a map, right? So that it helps us navigate through, not even a map, it's like a compass. It helps us navigate through ambiguity when we are trying to solve a problem. So similarly, design thinking is an approach, is a framework that helps us solve problems from user at the core. So empathy is at the core. You guys can read more about it. We can do another masterclass about design thinking later on, which will help you with product preparation again, but I'll just park it here for now. Now, coming back to product, right? So these are like simplistic definitions. Let's be a little technical here. There is this thing that we see on the screen. It's a product triangle I have written, or a product network that I came across in Daniel Schmidt's work. I'll share the name, so don't bother about noting the name. There are some articles written by him where he explains all of this. Now, what does it mean? The idea is to understand where does a product manager or product management fit in the ecosystem of an organization, right? Um, so let's start from the corner left side. It says user. Now user are the end users who are using the product, right? It says business. Now business is essentially the the part of the organization which is sponsoring the product and the tech teams, and they're expecting something in return, right? So business is as simple as, if I have a shoes store, I am here to sell shoes so that I can get money in return. And to have my infrastructure, if I need an app or anything on the software side, then I'll sponsor the tech team with an expectation of something in return, which is like my boosted sales, or orders from an area where people cannot visit my physical store, etc., etc., etc. So business is the part of which is fairly clearer and obvious to many people. LC is a business, Limty Corner, which is like a simple snack store where you can get chai and bunch of other things. It's a very transactional business, right? Now, technology, or the developers are the people who are implementing the technology, uh, whatever product we are building. Now that we understand what these things are, let's put this in context. Product managers are supposed to understand users' pain point and translate that into a business a product which is valuable to business also in some shape and form. Work with both of these to translate that into tech requirements. Now, what does tech requirement mean? If a coder understands a few languages and understands front end, back end, etc., 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 I have to communicate my requirement to them in their language so that they can build what I want them to build. Now, as an example, let's say that we have a website for our training and placement cell, right? Uh, what do we have there? We had, like, in my time, we used to have a forum where all of these notifications will come in. We used to have a bunch of other features. Then I had seen it like a few years ago. There were a bunch of advancements there. At that point, they still did not have an app. I do not know if we still have an app or not. Do we even need an app in the first place or not? Do we even want to spend our time there? All of these questions are supposed to be answered by product managers. Now, anyone who has worked in any conference, any say the placement committee, any club, etc., and you've tried to interact with your users through use of technology. The technology could be as simple as a no-code platform, like we are using a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group, right? So it is somewhere in the domain of product management. Now let's break it down, right? So all of this is white space according to simple geometry, right? There is some information over here and there is some white space over here, right? So in an article, Daniel Schmidt goes on to articulate very detailed in a very detailed manner what does a white space A mean, right? It is possible that developers are not as used to, or developers do not understand the user psyche well, right? There are people who are tech savvy who might not feel that these things are tough to understand, etc., etc. Now, what does the white space B mean? The white space between the user and the business, right? Um, ho- we might build a product, but that might not be profitable. Like WhatsApp, before it got acquired, um, WhatsApp was a free platform that was available, and after the first year, I think they started charging 50 rupees for lifetime or something like that. They did not have a revenue model at that point. Now there is advertisement for sure, and a bunch of WhatsApp for business features, which are monetized as well to some extent. Uh, it did not have a business model at that point would mean that they did not have any means to earn revenue, and the product manager is supposed to solve this problem, the business and the developer. Now there is some requirement that the business has for the user solving the problem, that needs to be translated to developers. So there are a bunch of different fields that are in each of these white spaces. Then there are these synthesis regions, which would effectively mean that there is sitting at the developer's corner, there is a user element and there is a business element, which is synthesis region AC, right? So in an article that I'll share with you guys, there is a lot of detail about what this means. So I'll just park it there for you guys to study. Um, Now, this is a very good example of what all streams come in over here. Now, between a user and developer, right, there is design, there is user research, there is web analytics. Once we have released something, we want to understand if the users are able to use it properly or not. So we have web analytics, we have community management, which is what I was talking about earlier, uh, managing our interactions through a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group. We have social media marketing when we are when we are trying to leverage social media for taking our product to market and get some traction over there. Similarly, we have when we talk of developers, a developer can say that give us 10 more developers and we can build it within 3 months instead of a year, right? So, but budget becomes a constraint. Product strategy and product roadmap is a part of product this white space, and so on. And similarly, there are a bunch of other things that come over here, like we spoke about business model development, revenue model, market sizing, etc., etc. Now, you might not know each of these terms, but what happens in organizations of different scale is that PMs might be required to fill in some shoes that they're not directly working on. For example, in a small startup, a PM might be fully owning the product roadmap, product strategy, as well as some part of investor relations. If a co-founder, if a PM is a co-founder, or if a co-founder is working as a PM, they would be responsible for product roadmap and vision, business vision, as well as maintaining investor relations, which is what, for example, Sachin Bansal did in Flipkart. Right now, he's doing that for Navi, and about to take that to market to public again. Uh, so all of these roles might need to be filled by the product manager. Now, it is possible that there is no analyst in the organization. So if we have launched something, but we want to measure if it's effective or not, so the PM is required to do the analysis as well. There is no user researcher, so PM is required to talk to the users and do that research as well. So all of this complexity sits with the product manager. There is a lot of ambiguity to start with, uh, but there is a lot of freedom in terms of how do we solve the problem. We have to break down the problem into some meaningful forms and solve the problem. Now, this is what product management is at the core. Now evolves an interesting question that product managers do get a lot of money straight out of campus because people are paying them well. It is across the ecosystem, so it's not just India. India is just following the trends across the world. Is that a good career choice for me? So I'm not here to discourage anyone from being a PM. I would still mention that these most of these skills are learnable skills, so we can just put in some hard work and learn these skills. But a lot of these skills are a lot of these things can be overwhelming for some people. So a lot of ambiguity. We need to put structure to different things. A lot of stakeholders, like we saw here, you just talk to so many people in the day that might just be like, when do I do my own work? मैं अपना काम कब करूँ? Right? So they are required to take a lot of ownership and accountability. It cannot happen that they're like, कि अभी नहीं हुआ, so we'll do it 3 days later, because other people are dependent on them. I have to translate the users, the research that I did to the business and say that, hey, this is one thing that we can build. Once we are agreed upon that, okay, this business model makes sense, and this vision and this roadmap makes sense, we work with the developers to to solve a tech roadmap, and then we build so it cannot happen that I'm not taking ownership and not accountable. I said that I'll do it end of this week, but it's been like 3 more weeks that I haven't done it. Cannot happen. But we don't have direct control over the outcomes. We are required the developers to develop the product in the first place for something to go live. We do not code ourselves in most setups, right? And most of the times, if you're working in a good organization, these are complex problems that PMs are required to solve, hard problems, right? So in my last organization, I was working in urban company. Urban company is solving problems uh, of the world, which no other startup has successfully, or no other organization has successfully done in the world through technology, right? There are big chains in the world which are doing it operationally, and they have quite some success over that, but nobody is doing that through technology. Now, doing it operationally involves a lot of operational costs. Doing it through technology reduces certain costs. So we were solving problems. We did not have an sorry, in Ola there is an Uber to copy from. In Flipkart there was an Amazon to and eBay's of the world to look at. In Swiggy, Zomato, there are like other counterparts in the world to look at. In urban company, there is nobody else to look at. You have to solve these problems yourself from scratch. And that's the bottom line. So it is a good uh, time to for you guys to reflect on, do I want such a structure? Do I want to interact with so many people? And there are people who initially feel that they don't want to interact with so many people, but later in their career they fall in love with this. You can transition at any point later on as well. I transitioned later on. Flipkart did not hire, or any product company did not hire straight from campus when I graduated. So is product management a good career choice for me, is a question that you should ask yourself. So do I enjoy working on deep problems and going really, really deep into some of the problem, and being an individual contributor? I don't want to work with people. I want to work with the problem and go deeper there. So a programmer might like to do that, or a data scientist would want to do that. I love working with numbers and crunching numbers and building models, etc., etc. A data scientist or a data analyst could be a better profile for that person. Product management is what we spoke about, and the definition of product management is not consistent across the companies. So the definition of a product manager in a Facebook is different from a PM in Google, is different from a PM in Amazon, is different from a PM in Microsoft, is different from a PM in Indian ecosystem like Flipkart, Swiggy, Ola. All of these have different definition of a product manager. I was not required to do the same things I did at Zilingo when I came to urban company. The expectation was slightly different. So it is important to understand that the product management definition evolves like many other definitions of what a business analyst would do, or what a data scientist would do. For data scientists, technology roles, etc., it is still uh, uh, harder boundaries, because these are like hard skills. I need to know coding to be able to do something. I need to understand a bunch of things to be able to be a data scientist. uh, a lot of product skills are soft skills. So this is what product management at a very high level is. Um, Now I'll take a pause for some questions. We can take a quick break. There are two more sections that I'm yet to cover. One is what is evaluated, and what is the second section is that what is required and how do we prepare for a product manager interview. But I'll take a quick pause. You can unmute yourself if you have any questions around this part of our discussion. The next two are smaller parts for now, and we might go deeper if we interact later on, after you've come back to college and started the next semester. Ayush, do you see any questions on the chat?
Not yet.
Not yet.
In case anyone wants to unmute, then feel free to do so if you
Feel
have.
free to do so. Meanwhile, if you don't have questions, do you have any feedback or any things that didn't make sense or like didn't click, didn't understand just through the previous? I'll just quickly scroll through the slides as well. We spoke about what is a product. We spoke about some bad. Yes.
I'm audible.
There is some echo, but you're audible. We'll try to understand what you're saying. Please go ahead.
Sir, as whatever you have learned in the college, at in IIT BHU,
Mhm.
how you are able to implement those things in product manager role? Like what things are helping to you in enhance your performance at that position?
Beautiful question. Whatever I have learned at in college. So there are, I'll split that into two parts. One is academics, which we learn through our structured curriculum. One is non-academics, which we learn otherwise in college. So I wasn't a very good student in academics. I used to score well, but that was largely based on 1 or 2 night studies or through some other means, which I wouldn't want to talk about. Uh, I did well in my MTech project, which was like I had a dual degree program. So I did well in that project because I like to do things by myself and there were no theory courses. So I just had to focus on my project. Of academics, I was involved heavily with the robotics club and the techniques as organizations. What I have learned there is immeasurable in terms of how to work with people, how to collaborate with people and solve problems, how to make sure that we are working towards the same common cause without egos, etc., etc. How do we break down a problem? So when I came to fourth year, we revamped the team structure of Technics. It was the first time that Technics had an app. So we had a tech team in a different way. Earlier, we used to have a website team. Now we had a tech team. We introduced a PR team, public relations team, which was instrumental in getting us lectures from guest lecturers from NASA, CERN, etc. Which was also instrumental in getting us some nice pro nights. 2 years later, we had Guru Randhawa that came in. So all of this happened because we made a structural difference. Prior to that, the core team or like the convener and like the gensec of the S&T council used to be responsible for like getting people, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to say there is, and again, this is an organization where nobody is paying anyone money. So people are working for a common cause, like placement committee, right? So what I learned from college is that I was in the surroundings of really sharp, really smart people with really high caliber. So which is what IIT JEE used to do that for us. Like I think it still does. Very high caliber people come in. Uh, and there are some people who are like senior to us or even in our year, even from juniors, like I have learned a great deal from how juniors, some of the juniors would approach problems. So problem solving is something that I feel I learned a lot in college. How to work with people is something that I learned a lot in college. How to how to how do I articulate this? Uh, I learned the importance of values and how does a value system make a difference in an organization like Technics or a company? How does organization's value system shape their cultures, etc., etc. So I learned a lot of great deal of these things, which are really really valuable to me. In terms of academics, since I mentioned that I wasn't really as interested or as diligent in studying that, uh, had I been diligent, I can say that it can add value, doesn't add value. I am not the right person to answer that question. So, in terms of academics, so I was not very good. I would score well, but that was easy because 1 2 nights of studies would do that for me at that point. But yes, so I did learn a great deal from people and from student community participating in these forums. But that is it. I'm able to use that in my corporate life in all of my roles that I have been in. I'm able to use that as a consultant that I work as of now as well. And yeah, that's my take on that. Any more questions at this point?
Yeah, so we have a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah.
There's one. Is product manager similar to a systems engineer, but at a larger scale?
I will need the person to define what they mean by systems engineer for me. I do not know their understanding of systems engineer. Uh, so the person who has ask the question, I request you to unmute yourself if you can and answer that for me, please. There are a bunch of people who have raised hands as well. So please go ahead. Don't wait for me to ask you to unmute yourself. And yeah.
Yeah, so am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
So I just wanted to ask that for a product to be developed, like do we say the product space is relative? Because one feature that is a shining star in the past could become a like nothing in current time because some other competitor has developed a more optimized solution for them. So is this space relative? Can we say the product development process is relative?
It is. It is. Instead of relative, I'll say that it's a journey, right? So something that even the same organization might have built and have been really successful at some point might be irrelevant a few years later or a few months later. See what happens is the user base changes with time, right? The understanding of a user and expectations of a user from the same product might change. For example, when we had WhatsApp early on, our expectations were really different. That okay, now we have group chats and we can chat in groups and even share media, etc., etc., etc. And then Hike came along and said that you can share stickers, etc., etc. So a lot of people felt that Hike is better, right? So WhatsApp, some things were getting redundant in some segments of the users, right? So and then WhatsApp came up with much more meaningful features like a video call, audio call, etc., etc. That it continued to be more relevant, right? So we used to have Rediff, Rediff Mail at some point. How many of you used Rediff Mail or Yahoo Mail? Yahoo used to be the biggest tech giant in the world at some point in 1990s and into the early 2000s. They even, I think, uh, had like a conversation with Google to buy them at some point, but the deal didn't go through. Yahoo is not as big anymore. Nobody know, even probably none of you would even know what a Rediff mail was. Uh, the reason is that the problem statement, the users' expectations changed, and some of these organizations did not change with time. Microsoft is not as prominent in the mobile world, right? Microsoft was very prominent back in the day, a very prominent OS along with Apple in the desktop ecosystem. Then Google came along and Google had an Android market. Apple evolved to the mobile ecosystem, but Microsoft could not do it more effectively. So it is a journey. It is time based. Yes.
Sir,
Yes. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask that if you are thinking about developing a product or launching it, so what is more important for the product to have a unique selling point, or it can have a variety of useful features? Like we talked about Hike and WhatsApp. So
Mhm.
Hike at the earlier stage when WhatsApp was in initial phases, Hike had added a lot of features. So, be- but doing that also it after some year it failed. So, what is the reason behind that?
I don't know this specific example why Hike failed and like why they could not keep up. Telegram continues to grow. It's a Russian company. It's there are some concerns about it being a Russian company, etc., etc. But it's its source code is open source, so people can see that it is actually very private in terms of browsing experience. The privacy is much better than WhatsApp, etc. Right? So what is more important, to have a core solution to a problem, or a bunch of things that you have? It depends on the setup actually. Mostly my answer would be that solving one thing right is more important, but you can say that solving one thing right can only get me 100 million users. There are no more users. For example, cred, as well as they might be doing, it is irrelevant for people who do not have a credit card, right? Now their target segment is only the people with high credit history, or like some people who can afford credit cards. Their target is not people like getting to as many number of people that, for example, a Paytm would want to reach out. So that's depends on what the organization is trying to solve. So the business vision or the organization vision is very, very important to decide this strategy. Second thing that matters here is what gives the organization a moat. A moat is defensibility, right? So what do we have today that nobody else can make us irrelevant? For example, now we understand what LinkedIn does, right? You guys probably have been using it much earlier than we guys started it. I am still not a very heavy user, so if I don't respond to you on LinkedIn or don't accept your follow request for a few days, a connection request for a few days, I'm not a very heavy user of LinkedIn. But I can create a same product like LinkedIn. Would it be as successful? The answer is no, because like somebody mentioned in the chat example earlier that all my friends migrated from Hike to WhatsApp. So you can't really do anything on Hike if you don't have friends there, even if you personally might like it. So LinkedIn has so much rich, not only people, but their histories of their careers, what their interests are, etc., etc. The network effect is so strong that it gives them defensibility. So what is it that an organization needs for defensibility? Do they need different features or do they need this one problem to be cracked really well? To be able to exist is another sort of decision that comes in.
Yes, sir.
So
Thank you.
one last question for now, and we'll circle back to questions in a while. Uh, in interest of time, so please go ahead. I interrupted someone.
Pulkit, I have a question. Can you give me examples of a couple of tasks that you did that you do as a product manager, and what were the challenges you faced?
I will cover this at towards the end. Okay, this is like something that I would talk about. It is optional. Some people can drop off later on, so we can have a deeper chat in interest of everyone time. And if they want to stay, they're most welcome to stay. But I want to cover a few parts before people start exiting as well. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Uh, all right, so let's come to the next section, that what is evaluated in a product interview, right? So there are a few things. Different people will structure it again in a different way. I have spoken to a lot of product managers, product leaders, etc. across the board, in Flipkart, in Ola, in Swiggy, in bunch of other companies, urban company, a bunch of other places, Zilingo being one of them as well. What is it that people look for? And at the core of it, this is what I was able to abstract. Um, Problem solving is one thing that people are looking for. Product thinking is the second thing that people are looking for. Now, how are these things different is something that I'll go deeper into in just a moment. The third thing that is relevant is data orientation, which is what I mean by that is also something that I'll define all of these individually. Fourth is tech orientation, and fifth is prioritization. Now, these are things that are evaluated over 1, 2, 3 interviews, whatever number of rounds that an organization takes, right? So again, problem solving is something that we have spoken about. First principles approach, design thinking approach, etc., are really relevant and useful in understanding how do we solve problems. Case studies that a lot of people who are interested in business roles, a lot of people who are interested in analytics roles also would be studying case studies. You might be studying books like Case in Point to understand what are different frameworks for solving problems, etc. These are all frameworks which are used to solve problems in a more structured way, right? So all of this is what I mean by problem solving. When I say product thinking, um, remember that we were talking about scale, right? The complexity comes in. There is a different level of complexity that comes in when we are operating at a scale of say 100 million users a day or 100 million users an hour, right? The kind of complexity that Hotstar has when it is streaming IPL or like a World Cup match between India and Pakistan, the concurrency. By that I mean the number of users who are trying to view the same match live at the same time is huge. And that problem is not there when, say, somebody's as many number of people are watching a recorded telecast or a recorded match. So the complexity changes game. And so problem solving and product thinking. This is generally evaluated either as a single round or two different rounds. Depending upon what people believe it to be the same thing or the different thing. There are schools of thought where people think that these are two different things. There are schools of thought which feel that in the real life, a product manager required to do all of this together. So it's better that we evaluate both of them in together, right? So as an example, let's say that I ask you to build an automobile we spoke about earlier. Let's say that we have to build a coffee machine, right? This is something that was asked to a friend of mine in a Microsoft interview. Build a coffee machine. Now, what is it? How is it relevant to a Microsoft product manager role, which is like a digital product manager role? What they are trying to evaluate there is how does a person break down the problem and solve the problem, right? A lot of people might also ask guesstimates over here. Now, guesstimates or estimation problems is something that you might have come across at some point that, okay, estimate the number of people, say at Banaras airport at 7 p.m. On a Sunday, right? Sunday evening, right? So um, this is something that is as random as it could be. It's possible that we might never get to a right answer. Even the interviewer wouldn't know. But what is important is how you approach the problem, how you scope the problem and solve the problem, right? The third part here is data orientation. Data orientation is once we have built something, right? We have to measure if it's working or not. It is as simple as that. If we have launched a feature, a, a if we have launched a physical product, we want to measure if it's working well or not. In the physical world, revenue or sales is one big way to look at that. Okay, this car is selling at X percent higher number of models per day, number of units per day or per week or per month as compared to the previous release that we had 2 years ago of a different car. So it is more fast, it is selling more fastly, right? So um, data is something which is we read metrics. Now anything is a metric. We can say that our CGPA is a metric to evaluate that how well a person is well versed with like their academic curriculum, right? um, uh, an average speed of a bike is a metric that, okay, what is the average of what is the average speed that I had in between when I started from place A to place B, and like this much was the distance. So like an average the mileage of a bike or a car is a metric again. In the tech world, you would hear terms like conversion, hear terms like some ratios, etc., etc., etc. But all of these things are essentially targeted to measure something or the other. Let's say that I made this slide and I presented this to you guys, and I make the same slide in a different way and present it to another set of audience a day after. And towards the end, I take a feedback from you and try to understand that what worked better. Now that is again has to have a metric to be able to define what works better for different users. And the fourth is tech orientation, which is effectively how do we translate, how do we converse, how do we interact with the tech person. Now we have to translate all of these requirements that, hey, I need to build an app for a placement cell. What is it that I need these three core features. One is that I need this, second is I need that, and third is something else that I need. Now if you tell the developer this much, it is not enough. They will ask you several questions that, okay, are you going to need this, that? To be able to converse with them, we need to understand some of their terminologies. We don't need to know how to implement them, but we need to understand what these are and what these do, right? It is as good as if I know how to drive a car, I might still not know how to fix an engine, for example, or how to fix a tire. Fix a tire is still easy. How to fix an engine or how to do the servicing of an engine, etc., etc. I still know how to drive. It's completely not related, right? So you need to know how to drive. You need to know the road rules if you're driving on the road. You also need a license, which is government regulation. But this is like you need to have an understanding of the automobile if you have to drive a car. Similarly, you need to have an understanding of the technology and what it's capable of when you're working as a product manager to be able to interface with the product manager. And the fifth part is prioritization. What do we build first? When WhatsApp was only a chat platform, they had like a lot of things in their roadmap in future, in their vision, that we want to be a single place for example, any sort of communication that people want to do, right? So audio call, video call, all of that comes over here. File sharing comes here, media sharing comes here, contact sharing comes here, payments comes here, etc., etc., etc. Now, in what order do we build those things so that we are able to uh, provide value to our customers faster? And because if we provide value to customers, it brings delight. If it brings delight, we will be able to retain our customers or gain new customers. So that is a simple mental model, right? That value generates happiness. Happiness keeps people on the platform. So you have to continuously keep delivering value. Something that was relevant a few years back would be irrelevant a few years later if you do not innovate, if you do not continue to generate that differential amount of happiness that more happen. I remember at some point Uber launched a feature which said that, okay, you can just scan your card and it'll read the numbers. Uber is not a scanning company. Uber is not even a camera like or anything to do. But it was just to make things simple. At that point, wallets were not as prominent. At that point, UPI was not as that, not even in existence in India. Uber released that feature across the world. They released that in India as well, and it worked like magic. Would it be applicable to all the users? Probably not. But there was this differential happiness that they delivered to the users just because they felt it's the right thing to do, and they would have had some data to back it up that why they need to solve that problem, right? So if I'm looking at a payments journey in an Uber, for example, I would be measuring that what at every step where are people dropping off the most, or like where are people taking the longest. So data orientation would help me understand the problem in the first place, that hey, this is one step that takes people the longest and there are times when they even drop off. So what would probably be happening is that we'll have to build some hypothesis that either people are not able to add things, or they feel it's too complicated and they resort to some other competitor or like an offline platform, say just go to the road and like get a cab, right? So or an auto, for example. So you build some hypothesis, test it with users, and then build products. But what do I build first? That is prioritization. There are different frameworks for that. Now, this is primarily what is evaluated in a PM interview, in especially at an entry level. In senior leadership roles, there might be a bunch of other things that are evaluated, but this core still remains. There are different layers which are added on to top, but this is the core of it. Again, I'll pause here for questions. If any of you wants to go deeper, we'll talk about how to prepare, and we'll also talk about some examples. But just in interest of time, we started off a little late, so I'm keeping these words over here and pausing here for questions. If you guys have more questions at this point.
Right. So there is one from the previous Q&A session.
Yes.
It might be relevant to a lot of people here.
Absolutely.
Do case study competitions help in getting the skills required for product manager, and of course the interview for it?
I would say yes. A lot of case study problems are essentially case study. Like, let's go to the core of the word. Let's approach like take first principles approach. Case studies are generally the studying of a case that happened in an organization, mostly in the past, or their current problems that they are facing, and they are just outsourcing their problem to see that, okay, whatever ideas we get, we can get something, and we will evaluate who thinks better, and somebody who is thinking better and solving, who might be a right fit, we might even offer them an opportunity or a gift hamper or something, right? A certificate, uh, to the winner, or some pre-placement interview, or some anything that is applicable, that is relevant, right? So but what is it that a person who is participating in a case study competition would get? They would get a problem statement. They would get a person who's evaluating their solution to that problem statement, right? So you will have to break down the problem. You'll have to structure it. You'll have to scope out the problem in the first place. That when I spoke of airport example for right, how many people are at the airport now? There are a lot of people who just start like, okay, let's assume that there are 5 flights which are landing at every hour. This happens, that happens. But what are the set of people we are looking at in the airport? Are we including the staff? Are we including the people who are the cab drivers outside? Are we including the people who are there to drop off people? So we first have to scope the problem, right? So this all of this is common with case study problems as well. You would find that in case in point, that you first have to ask exploratory questions to be able to narrow down upon the problem statement to get to the right problem statement. So a lot of these things are very relevant. Where they might not be relevant, I would say that don't just do them for certifications, or don't just do them for the sake of doing it. If you're doing it with the right mindset, from the mindset of learning, do it. If you're doing it under pressure and you feel that you do not have the time, or you have some other things to do, it is not mandatory to do. You can still learn some of these skills, but practice is something which is required. And as good as MBA schools are for practice and cross group exercises, in my times, people were not as proactive back in college to make groups of five, 3, 4, 5 people, and do case studies, work on problem statements like this, and try to sharpen their own skills together, collaborate like that. If your people are doing it, and it might have improved with time, especially with like moving to online setups a lot more. If that is the case, collaboration is required, practice is required. That is very helpful. If not, then again, case studies can help with practice. Yes. I see somebody has raised hand. Arun, Anand, have you spoken? Have you asked your question, Arun? Do you have anything at this point?
Yeah, I had raised it, but I think Pulkit said that he will comment on that in the end.
Sorry.
I had raised it earlier, about 10 minutes back, and Pulkit said that he'll take it up in the end.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Yeah,
So
the one about what are the various tasks in product management that you go through.
sure, sure, absolutely, absolutely. Awesome. I have that mental note taken. Um, okay, so these things are evaluated in a PM interview. Let me give you some examples, right? So if you have to practice yourself, if you have to go deeper and try to understand and prepare, right? So we will talk about some resources which will help you prepare well. We will also talk about some of the books that you can read, some articles, etc., blogs, etc., that you can follow to continue, some Twitter threads, etc. All of that. But how do you sharpen your own skills by yourself, right? So the simple thing is that start evaluating things from this lens. Now, lens is just a paradigm, just the way you look at the world, right? So now think of it's a very typical question, right? So think of three of your favorite products, right? They could be apps, they could be websites, they could be physical products, they could be, this is like just a mobile case holder, a mobile holder. So I have it on my screen and I don't have to touch it when like a notification comes. And I have a keyboard that I interface with it. So I don't even have to touch the screen. I can use the same keyboard to type on my laptop or like any of my other devices which have a typing interface, and my phone with just a quick switch. So all of these are beautiful products, but um, the things to ask yourself is that what is it that I like about these products? What is it that is causing this delight that I say that this is the best thing that I have ever used? Or you can even go narrow and say that, okay, in the utility space or in the content space, right? I have Netflix, I have Hotstar, I have bunch of other apps, Sony Live, etc., etc., etc. Which one do I like the most? Amazon Prime is there. Which one do I like the most and why? Right? So try to understand what are these delight elements which make you happy when you are looking at any of the products. And the next question you can ask yourself is, what are, say, 3 or 5 things that you feel are still pain points and need to be solved? What are those top 5 problems that you identify with that? And then you can go deeper and say that, okay, if I have to solve any of these problems or like all of these problems, how do I go about it? Right? So I can think of, say, a Netflix and say that, okay, this thing is just complicated for me. How do I solve that? And I can think of that, okay, I can solve it in 3 different manners, or I can do this first and this later, and like I can do, let's say, 3 or 4 things. The next thing to think is that how do I prioritize what to build first? So this is what you're talking about. I say that we can take a real problem. Let's say that Netflix has a problem that they have realized that a lot of people drop off before they even play anything. It could be because there is a lot of opportunities, a lot of choices at hand. There is a term called decision fatigue, because of which the Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs of the world wear the same clothes every day so that they don't have to make an additional decision on an everyday basis. They're just trying to get rid of decision fatigue. So it's a real thing. There is research done on that. You can read papers on that. So they want to reduce decision fatigue. How do we reduce decision fatigue? So you can think that, okay, there can be multiple. We can do a chat session over here that you can pop in ideas, but in interest of time, I'm not doing that. That we can come up with n number of features that we can do this, that, etc. It's good to think on all of these lines, but then you'll have to crystallize it into like top 3 things that we will do, which will help us. Now, why do we need to do these top 3 things first, and how do I measure that it did have an impact on my problem that I was trying to solve, right? So I say that a lot of people drop off without playing anything. So I'll have to define a metric to say that the percentage of users who log in and drop off without playing anything, wo percentage before and after the release should be different, and it should reduce with time, right? if it increases with the time, I would know that my product has tanked. Whatever feature I released is not working well. Instead, it is doing worse. People were able to find something within 30 seconds earlier. Now it is taking some people to whom we have released the product. It is taking people 40 seconds to start something, and a greater percentage of people is dropping off now. It is not work. So we have to measure that. So that is how you can sharpen your skills. You can just pick up an app or pick up some of your favorite apps and try to see what areas work well, what would be different, how would you measure different elements, etc., etc., and how do you improve that. And these are very typical questions that get asked in interviews also. A lot of people do not ask these questions thinking that people would have prepared for these are obvious questions, right? But a lot of people still do ask that. What Let's just give them the playground. Let's just, and especially to campus people, I have seen this with a lot of the people who are leading campus placements in colleges. Do speak to their interviewers that these are people who are graduating from college, so don't be as hard on them, right? So as lower down your standards, if you're taking a PM versus like an APM from college or like anybody from college, treat them accordingly. Respect the people who are coming in from their respect their context. So a lot of people do ask simple questions and give a lot more leeway to people who are preparing from campus for campus interviews. So that happens a lot. So this is a very simple question, like what are your top three favorite products, or favorite apps in the world? What are the three apps? It gets disguised in different ways. What are the three apps that if I remove from your phone, you'll be really restless? Right? What are the three apps that you can't live without? What are the three apps that you would, what are the three first apps that you would check when you wake up in the morning? It can get disguised in any way. So what are the top three things that you love about that? What are the top three things that you hate, absolutely hate about that app? And if you have to improve, say, one of these things, I choose that, okay, if you have to improve this or fix this, how would you do that? Which one would you do first? And how would you measure whether your solution is working or not? This entire set of things will help you sharpen your, it is like a case study in itself, but it's an open-ended case study. You can do anything with that. You can look at anything and keep evolving your answers as you continue to read and learn more. So are there any more questions, or otherwise I'll just get to how to prepare for a PM interview quickly?
I think we can move forward now.
Awesome. So how do we prepare for a PM interview? A lot of you would be interested in this, and rightly so. So this is a list of books that you can read up. I don't know if you can read it properly. Do I need to zoom in? Can you read?
Yeah, it will be great if you could zoom in. It's actually
Read
really
that.
challenging. Yeah.
Let me see how to zoom. Okay, awesome. So let me take you through this and avoid the clutter that you see on my screen for now. Yeah, I hope this is better. Oh no, can I still zoom? No, oh yeah, I can. Awesome. So when you're getting started, there is this beautiful book called Inspired by Marty Kagan. Uh, at an entry level, there are these two books, Cracking the PM Interview and Decode and Conquer, which have a lot of good content. Then when you're developing into the PM role, there are a bunch of other set of reading material which specializes in different areas, right? So if you're setting goals, OKRs is something that is very relevant, which is objective and key results. So measure what matters. This is what we were talking about as well, right? Sprint is something which is something used by the technology team. So how do you do sprint planning, and how do you plan your discovery sprints? How do you discover? Now, discover is something that you have to understand what users' pain points are. We call that discovery. You have to discover the pain points. And then you have to collaborate with a bunch of people. So you have to make user stories, epic alignment, blah, 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 etc., etc. There is another thing which talks about user behavior. There are a bunch of different books. Now, all of these, the lean product playbook, lean startup, value proposition design, all of these are amazing books. And as much as they are amazing, it is a lot to read through before your campus placement. You have a bunch of other things to do. So what we are going to do now, this is all about product. Then if you remember the product triangle that we spoke of earlier, right, which has tech, user, and business, there are a bunch of different books that you'll find in each of these elements. Like there are different books that you'll find in business space or entrepreneurial space, etc., etc. It is up to your Shraddha how deep you want to go to. But if you're just starting off and you're like, for now, my focus is placements, and later on, I'll continue developing my skills, which is what most people do, and you need to evolve. We will focus on a few areas and few books. So these first two books are really, really important. Cracking the PM interview and Decode and Conquer. There are PDFs available of this, like soft copies available on LibGen, etc. platforms. So it's better if you buy these books so that you can take notes as well. But if you can't, there are PDFs, etc. available easily. So you'll have to look a little bit, but you'll find it. And in these books, like in the PM interview, a lot is spoken about like how different PM roles are in different organizations, etc., etc., etc. It will help you understand the product ecosystem better. But if you still don't have time and really want to sharpen it, you can just look at certain sections of the book that I have mentioned here. So chapter 14 looks at product questions, some case questions, estimation questions, some articles in the appendix, and the rest of the book, and some cases from Case in Point. Case in Point is a different book. So this is my understanding. I have worked with campus placement like since 2017 for a few years. So this is my journey of like what worked the best for people and learning from people who made it, how they focused, how they prioritize, etc., etc. So continuous feedback is something that I also need to take. Uh, Decode and Conquer is another beautiful book by Lois Lynn, which speaks of some frameworks, etc., and beautifully explains how to talk about metrics, which is measurement area, estimation. We have spoken about estimation in the other book also. Pricing is something which works very closely with the business element. So, and it also works very closely with the case element. So if you are open for consulting interviews or business analyst or product, a lot of these things are still going to be very helpful. So you might not become a product manager and still some of these things can pay you well. And chapter 7 talks about getting technical, which is the tech focus that we were talking about, the tech orientation. But there is a different book that has come out recently, which is Tech Simplified for PMs and Entrepreneurs by a PM from Flipkart. His name is Deepak Singh. It is a beautiful simplification, a nice storytelling, very, very simplified for non-techies, for techies who are people who are software programmers who have been or from other branches who understand these things. These things might not even need to be prepared because you understand those already or you learn that already. And some remaining chapters read. And then there is another book, Swipe to Unlock. It is a very simple book. It doesn't talk of like these things from an interview preparation perspective, but it does talk about how different products have evolved. I learned that what are the most famous mobile OS in the world? Android is one, we are aware. Apple ka iOS is one that we are aware. The third most famous one is the one that is there in Geophones. Geophone is a simple candy phone which has a different OS, which is so famous because the penetration is so strong. I learned so many different things from this book. It's an easy read, so you can just read it in the passive times, etc., etc. And the other set of things that you need to do is to read some articles and blogs on a regular basis. Now, most companies, because they have to build their brands, they also publish blogs in on Medium or on their own blogging platforms. Netflix has a blog, Gojek has blogs, Swiggy has blogs. You can read a beautiful blog on how Swiggy Pop was built. You can note this down, how Swiggy Pop was built. It talks about in detail expression of how a product manager went about building Swiggy Pop. Many of you would not have used Swiggy Pop because I don't see that feature anymore. And it was probably live only for some time, or maybe that they only released in a certain ecosystem. I was in Bangalore at that point. So what does the feature do? What is it that they were trying to do and how did they do it would give you a real taste of what product manager does in a day-to-day world, um, and how varied the work can be. Um, the next important thing is practice case studies in groups. Um, it is very, very helpful. It is very, very important. A lot of us have this element of judgment with our peers that what kya karna, tu sikhayega, all of that. Be humble, learn to take feedback, and even if you don't accept that it's a valid feedback, it's okay to take a note of it and move on. Absorb whatever you feel is relevant that people are adding to you, and be smart about people you're practicing with. So it is very, very important to continue doing that. A lot of us might feel like that we do not have the time now. We are going for internships. We're just getting done with our end semesters, and then we are preparing for this, that, etc. I will start preparing from say June or July or and we keep procrastinating in our heads, making different scenarios. We'll do this, that, etc., etc., etc. I would say it is a recipe for failure. Uh, it is very simple to make a simple rule to be consistent. Uh, it is easier said than done, and to be honest, I still struggle with consistency even now in some aspects of my life. But when I say consistency, you can just make a simple rule that I'm going to spend 10 minutes every day on product management preparation or on any preparation that you're doing. Now, 10 minutes could mean that you find a nice blog and you read it. You make a Medium account, you subscribe to some nice things, and you read one blog, one article every day. One article every day will take you to the extent that you can't even imagine. Or you can going back, if you feel that you need to read this, you can read the book in your own time in detail. But I will go through at least these critical chapters once quickly, and then I can go deeper and make notes and like revisit them later on, etc., etc. A lot of us get stuck at such planning stage, but make it simple for you, make it doable for you, and make it a point that you do it every day. And if you're not, or like once in every 3 days, whatever your frequency be, and make sure that if, for example, uh, you are doing it in a say on a daily basis, and you ended up skipping a day. I went home and there was this friend's like sister's wedding and I couldn't do it, blah blah. Make sure that you don't skip 3 days in a row or 2 days in a row. And building this accountability to yourself would again be really really helpful and help you shine very well in placement interviews and in general in life. And this is what I meant by first principles approach, that break it down, make it simple, make it doable, and apply the product thinking in your own life in general, how you approach life as well. Um, so quickly pausing here, if I'll share all of this, so you don't need to note it. I am sure a lot of you would have already taken screenshots, so no worries about that. It is there is no monopoly on that. Go ahead, share as much as you want, and quick common pitfalls where people fail. One is jumping to solution quickly. In the airport example that I was talking about, people tend to just try to get to an answer. Now, scoping the problem, and as if I am an interviewer, I'm like the candidate has lost half the battle already. I would still be open-minded to see how the candidate approaches the problem, but a lot of interviewers are turned off and like probably would ask the candidate to leave in 10 minutes if that is allowed, and which might hurt the candidate's self-esteem very strongly. So that is one thing. To have it in mind that you don't have to jump to the solution. When a question is asked, think of a conversation that you would have with your friend, say when we are having a conversation that, hey, let's restart techniques again. Let's build an app for our placement committee. Right? You'll have a conversation that why do we need an app? Right? Why do we need an app? What is it that we want to accomplish through the app? What is it that our website is not doing that we want our app to do? Right? And okay, if we have all agreed upon that we want to build, or like somebody can ask this question that what are we losing if we do not build an app and continue to rely on website, right? Let's say that we answered all of these questions and we came to a conclusion that we do need to build an app, which is when we'll start thinking that, okay, what are the core features that we need? Now, one way to look at it is that we can simply look at how the website exists and translate that into the app ecosystem, but that's a bad way to do it. That is not first principles approach of doing it. I remember I was with a friend a few weeks back. He was trying to apply for a driving license, and the ecosystem of driving license application at that point in that state was that you have to first make the payment at a different page, and then you have to go to a different page to book an appointment. And what was happening is that the appointment booking was failing, and I felt that it's such a broken experience that you should ideally book the appointment, do a soft reservation of that appointment slot so that nobody else takes it. Wait for the payment to happen. If the payment fails, free up that slot. If the payment doesn't fail, book that slot for that person. Now, in case any failure happens, the person does not have to suffer. The user does not have to suffer. This is user empathy. But what probably happened in that license website when it was being digitized was they completely translated the process how it happens in the offline world. Now, how it happens in the offline world is there is a finance section where there is someone sitting who is authorized to collect payments on behalf of the organization and give out receipts. So they take care of the finance. So you go there to take a challan and like get a receipt of that you have made the payment. Go to another counter and say that okay, I need to book an appointment or I need this. So this completely translated the same experience in the online world, but it's not the cleanest experience. It's not the one that works the best for the users. So don't jump to solutions quickly. Think first principles. Why are you doing what you're doing? What are you trying to do? How will you measure what you're trying to do? And then when you're solving the problem, if you're making any assumptions, state them clearly, right? Knowing that you're making any assumption is also very important. For example, if you are thinking of building something for Ola drivers, right? If I work with an assumption that the Ola drivers, most of the people who are like their income group is this much, and so they might be having very low end smartphones, right? That is one assumption. If I'm making that assumption and solving using my that assumption in some anywhere in the solution, I have to express that. I have to make a note of that and I have to express that to the interviewer that okay, this is one assumption I'm making. The interviewer can even challenge you on the assumption and say that okay, we have data that shows that 80% of the people have screen size bigger than so and so. So you don't really, this is not really valid. So you can let go of that assumption. But if you don't state that assumption, it is the loss of the candidate, right? Um, Again, the third part is not involving interviewer in the process. It is as simple as if you're solving a problem with your friends, you would involve them that why do we need this? If somebody tells me that we need to build this, the first question I'll ask them, why do we need this, right? What is it that we are trying to solve? And there are times that the interviewer might just say that, okay, this is what I need you to figure out. Do we need this or not? So then you have to work with yourself, but you have to keep the interviewer involved. So you can take pauses in interview that, okay, give me a minute to get my thoughts together. And in that part where you're not talking to the interviewer, you can be as unstructured as you want to, take a note of all the ideas that you want. And then when you're talking to them, structure the ideas or like structure the ideas before you talk to them so that you come across as a structured thinker, even if you started off from very divergent random ideas. So that is one. The pitfall is that people take very long pauses, 5 minutes, I'm just solving the problem. And the candidate might have done it really well, but not all interviewers are okay with, having that patience, saying that, okay, now tell me what you have done, right? And the fourth is something that you can't really do a lot about, different roles disguised as APMs. I have seen that in the ecosystem recently that a lot of startups, because they want to hire smart people from IITs or other good colleges, they disguise their analyst or operational roles as APMs. Try to understand what a PM does in that organization if you're joining that organization through campus, off campus, etc. as well. Um, there are the fifth point, that is that there are some startups where the product ecosystem is reporting into business or technology. Now think of two consultants who start a company. What they need is they do need product, but all of that is rolling into a business leader or a tech leader. And when I say tech leader, a developer, right? So those might not be the best places to be. They might still need to hire a senior product leader to be able to guide the product team in the right direction, which is what, for example, Urban Company did, right? There are three co-founders. Two of them were consultants. One of them was a tech co-founder who leads the dev team or like the software team. But there is a dedicated person, and there were two dedicated people earlier, like a few years back, and there is one dedicated person who who makes sure that the product team and the vision of product team and the ways of working of product team is aligned with the organizational goals, and while ensuring that we are following the best practices in the product, that the product ecosystem is well taken care of. And that is the role for all, even the business leader or the tech leader as well in their own org. You need a tech leader to lead a software team. You cannot do it with the business team. So there are some functions which are just mismatched or misaligned in some of the startups. So be mindful when you're interviewing there, and when you're interviewing at a anywhere, right? Even if you don't want to go there, leverage that opportunity to your best by ensuring that you do your best and derive the best value out of it. The worst case thing would be that it'll be a practice interview for you, but do not let that hold you back from doing your best, right? So after you get the offer is that you can choose whether you want to go there or not, and there is a lot available. off campus as well. And before I pause again for questions, there is one last thing that I want to cover. Campus placements is, let's go first principles on campus placements. Why does campus placement exist? Right? There are a bunch of smart people who are graduating with different qualifications. There are different industries or different corporates or different organizations which need such people in their ecosystems, and this demand supply mismatch is being solved by the campus placements. So it's a demand supply matching problem. There is supply in the campus, which is like the people graduating. There is demand in the organizations, and this problem is being matched. It is, in a way, I can relate that demand supply matching is what an Ola does as well. Demand supply matching is what an urban company also does to some extent, right? And same is done by Swiggy also, with some bunch of other things. So this is what campus placement is. Campus placement at times can be unfair as well. Now, when I say unfair, it depends on what the interviewer's mindset was, how his day has been, had they eaten or not eaten, what part of the day you are checking in, what is happening in their personal lives, and a lot of other things which are beyond your control. Now, when there are so many things beyond your control, you might feel that it's unfair to you, and at times it is, but it's not the end. I want you to know that there are people who are doing beautiful in life, and I'll share a story of a person in a bit. But they either did not have a very good campus placement or did not get placed at all after graduating from an IIT, uh, and are still doing amazing, amazing work in their lives. It is not the end. It is possible that you might feel that it's unfair because you know this guy has been doing coding from first year, or like this person is preparing for MBA, so they are placed well for aptitude interviews, and like I'm not aptitude the written tests that happen, and I'm not qualifying these tests. It is possible you might feel that, and it is true that it's possible that a lot of people are well prepared for something that you are not. But again, it is not the end. To believe in yourself, irrespective of where you are on the journey, everyone has a unique journey. And um, coming to the story that I was talking about, so I had a friend back in college. We became friends in third year when we used to work for robotics club together. Um, she was the Seki, I was a joint Seki of robotics club, and um, and she got a nice internship in Tata Steel. She was from metallurgy, right? So Tata Steel, she went to Tata Steel, and Jamshedpur, did amazing work. Being the kind of person she was, very determined, very hardworking, and very diligent, and a little bold or shameless in terms of if you have to collaborate with people, she wouldn't think what people would think, or this is etc. etc. None of that clutter in her mind. She would, very headstrong person. She went on to solve. Now Tata Steel, let's think about Tata Steel. Tata Steel is a very old organization. It used to operate in some departments and which would operate in silos, very similar to how some parts of BHU or IIT BHU also operate even now, in silos. When I say silos, they're operating separately, right? Now that person did some work with collaborating with different departments. They did something in the furnace, some fuel efficiency, something that the some efficiency improved, and like they were saving some 100 crores every month. After having done that remarkable work in 2 months, she was pretty confident that she's going to get a pre-placement offer, which was expressed by her mentor there as well, that we're looking forward to see you soon here. Now, with that comfort that she's placed already, she did not prepare for placements. In fourth year, she started working for Technics, which is where we were also associated with, until August, September, until the placement list came out. She did not prepare, and a lot of written interviews started written exams started happening, and she wouldn't show up. She wouldn't show up for any of those things. At that time, I think it wasn't mandatory if you're not sitting for placements. So she had some flexibility, and she would not show up, and she would not prepare. What happened was that last year, some students from metallurgy who got placed in Tata Steel did not join there. So what they did is that they rolled out offers to electrical students, they rolled out offers to electronic students, but they did not roll out offers to the metallurgy students. Now this person was completely shattered that I haven't even prepared, and it's middle of the semester already, and I'm already starting way behind everyone else. But she started, didn't have any other option, so she started preparing. Earlier she wouldn't get through written interviews, then she started getting through written keep saying written interviews, written tests. Then she started going through written tests, and that continued till December, and she had some written tests that she had qualified. But unfortunately, in December, she could not make it to any of the companies. And then January came, and then February came, March came, April, May, June, and then she graduated, went home in May, June, whenever she went, without any job in hand. Now, this is a very smart person who had a very beautiful profile, had worked in college organizations, had done some remarkable work at internship, did well in academics, was good in interpersonal skills, good in problem solving, still just did not work out. Um, so what to do? She went to Bangalore and she started applying in different companies, and then she finally in September or August, I think, she finally got a job. She was not even preparing for a developer, but she got a job as a junior developer. um, okay, she needed the money and she wanted to start somewhere, so she started, but she had applied some other companies and she finally got into Mu Sigma. So think of it that she got into Mu Sigma after a few months of graduating from the college. Now, in between, she had gone home. She had heard this from relatives or people close by that it would have been better had she been in the local college. At least placement to ho jata hai. At least she would have gotten a job. And she was the first person from her village to go to an IIT in the first place. So a major setback there. Then from Mu Sigma, she moved to, and in Mu Sigma, they have a beautiful Mu Sigma University where they teach a lot. She, being a hard worker, she made sure that she learns a lot. Moved to Ola. That was early days of Ola Analytics, very early days. Moved to Ola at a junior role after a year of working at Mu Sigma. Grew really fast there, moved to product in Ola, and then moved to Zilingo as their first product manager. Had a really nice stint at Zilingo, and now being settled as a product manager in the industry really well, she left all of that and went to do an MBA. Now, a lot of you would think that a lot of people do MBA to get into product management. What is she doing? She left Zilingo, the product leader role, to do her MBA from Stanford Graduate School for Business. And now she's working as an investor, as a bunch of other things. Her name is Chanchal Bhurani. She's a batchmate from my times, from 2010 to 14 batch. I had a dual degree, so graduated a year later. But campus placements is not the end. I have many other examples where people did not get placed on day one, day two, even the entire month of December, who are doing amazing in their lives. So do not, it's a rat race. There is a reason it's called a rat race. It is a good solution that you find a job in the campus, but if you don't find a cab one day, it doesn't mean that your life is ending. So be patient with yourself, keep investing in yourself, believe in yourself. And I'm here to take any questions that you might have. And if there are no questions, I'll get to the question that Arun sir had asked. Yes. Thank you for attending. Thank you for being patient with me. And I'm here to take questions if there are any.
I think we can first take up Arun sir's question, then we just move on to others.
I think that question is relevant to most people as well, if they're still here. So what do I do on a day-to-day basis as a product manager? Again, that depends on different phases of what I'm doing. So let's start with say I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. I have quit Urban Company and I'm consulting a startup which has a business model, a very successful business model, but they do not have a tech team, right? And they're doing really well in their own ecosystem, but they want to scale. So what I did there is that I interacted with them, first the leadership, and then like different people from different teams to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it, right? To understand what their business vision is, what their values are, so that whatever I build is in line with their values and their business vision. There are things that I question in their mission statement, that why is it this way, and either I got answers or they improved their business their mission statement. I knew of their old business mission statement, which was limited to 1 million people or something, and then they had evolved to a more ongoing. So this is a part of a product manager's role. A lot of people call this discovery, product strategy, product visioning, etc., etc., etc. Now we have a product vision. What we are supposed to do is that we are supposed to product vision aligned with business team. So I'm still speaking to them, presenting my solutions to them, that this is what we should do according to me, makes sense, collecting feedback from them, what makes sense according to them, etc., etc., etc. So we have some direction now. From that direction, we still need to build a real product. We still haven't done anything in terms of a tangible product, right? So my next thing that I would do is that I'll speak to users, that the end users who are using the who are supposed to use the service or the product, or who will interact with the app whenever it comes, or who will interact with whatever we have whenever it comes. I will speak to users to understand what are their core pain points, etc., etc., etc. And there is a third area that I have defined, is that what are the, like I said, it's a startup, and like most of the people are from the business side, and they don't have a tech team. They also did not have a framework to measure their how different parts of the organization are working. So I put up, this is something that I haven't shared with them yet. I'll do that in the upcoming week. That what are the metrics that I believe we should be tracking? What are the metrics that drive the core metrics at that organization, right? So if revenue is the core metric, or is profitability the core metric, how does everything that we do in the organization tie up in a measurable way to that? And then when we build products, I will talk to users, understand. In between, we'll work with the designers to have a very basic, and I've already started that discussion with the designers, that we will build some very basic MVP. MVP being minimum viable product, or the V0 of the product that we'll go out live with. Um, Speak to users, work with designers to chart that out, that how would it look and feel. This is where you hear terms like UX, UI, user flow, user experience, first time user experience that might be different from a repeat user experience, etc., etc., etc. And and after that, I'll work with the tech team to implement that, and to implement that. And on a day-to-day basis, say at Urban Company, which is a more steady state company, a more organized, a more scaled company, I would interact with business, product, different product teams, technology on a day-to-day basis, depending upon what phase of the problem we are in. We used to work in a quarterly format, so we would, let's say towards the end of December, or towards throughout December, we would identify problem statements in our product mandates. I used to work on partner success, so I would look at partner success. What are my core metrics? How are we doing, etc., etc., etc. Where is more scope? What do we do? What are the core user problems? I look at the voice of the partners. uh, how do we, what are the main problems, how do we solve that, and then define the roadmap for the next 3 months and the next entire year. But 3 months is a part of the core focus. And then every month we try to translate that, and like, so my every day would not look the same. Every day what I'm doing would look different, and depends upon what requires, what is needed to be done every day. And it is a part of that product network or product triangle that I was talking about. But it is pretty different on a day-to-day basis. Does that answer your question, Arun sir?
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Uh, on the basis of this answer, like, does anybody else have a different question, or like something that they want me to touch upon, or we can wrap up? It's been 2 hours since we started, and we started late because of some delays on the tech side. So it's already been 2.5 hours that we are here. So thank you for being here in the first place. There is one last thing, and I think, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Pulkit sir, I just had one question. That,
Yeah.
like you said, often consulting roles are also disguised as APM roles and stuff like that happens. And as a fresher, there isn't much distinction about if for distinction for someone who wants to like go into consulting or product management. So how does one like set their minds upon one thing, that I want to do consulting or I want to do product management? What are the main difference points in these two?
Yeah, so at an entry level, right? So I have been in this loop myself a lot. That where do I start from? Do I start from consulting? Do I start from this, that? And I realized that it is not really as much in my control in a campus placement setup, right? So either you have a very clear answer to that, why do you want to do what you want to do, and you have a very clear answer to what you want to do, or you are open to learning that. So there are two different approaches to this. One is that I'm open to learning, and I'll narrow down upon wherever I feel an early start is better. Or like an approach could be that, okay, I'm okay doing a consulting role which is similar to a product role in terms of stakeholder management, in terms of product problem solving, etc., etc. In that case, my prioritization say is based on whatever I get, or whatever pays me the best, right? So compensation, remuneration can be a factor there. There could be other factors like culture, etc., etc., etc. But a lot of people, I haven't seen a lot of campus people being very heavy on culture, that okay, this doesn't align with my culture, because they would not have a benchmark themselves of what they mean by culture. And Doing an internship in an organization for a few months might not necessarily give you a true picture of how a culture works. The answer completely depends upon you. And I would also suggest that don't delve upon, spending a lot of time over that. What do I want to do? And after I have the answer is when I start the preparation. If you have like a few open areas that, okay, I am from, see myself, I was from biochemical engineering, didn't want to code, so never learned coding. Didn't want to do research, so didn't go deeper into academics as well. Um, Realized that I enjoy problem solving, etc., etc., and I enjoyed numbers. So I wanted to go into analytics or something related to do with business numbers, etc., etc., in a startup ecosystem where there is learning is fast. So all my time at Technics Robotics Club, I had a great focus on learning. During my times early years at Flipkart, I had great focus on learning. And this is my third career in 7 years of experience. And like in within the first 4 years itself, I had disrupted my life twice, which would effectively mean that I would not grow as fast in terms of like, or some people might actually, but if I'm disrupting, like if I'm starting from scratch every few years, I'm starting, it's not an upward journey always, right? So that was my choice. So I was open to going anywhere where I can learn and see what works for me, and like develop more understanding about whether this works for me or not. So after first year, I was clear or after a few weeks in finance, I was clear I don't want to do finance. I still did it because I was like, I still want that lens, that understanding that I would apply in other areas of the ecosystem. And while I was still exploring what are these other areas I want to go into. So where do you start from? My suggestion would be that look for what are the common things to prepare in many of these domains. Start preparing on those domains while doing the case studies, while interacting with people from different ecosystems. You would get probably more clarity about where do you want to go to. And be open-minded. It is possible that you might learn a lot in a role that you never thought you could. And while the pitfalls that we are talking about, right, that some roles are disguised as APMs, it is hard to distinguish even for me right now, right? If a startup comes and like asks me that, hey, we have an opening for a lead PM or a director of PM, I want to understand that how does their team structure works. Are PMs, do PMs have the authority to make decisions, or is it coming top down in an organization, which means that the leadership decides and you just execute, so you can't really add as much value, etc., etc., etc. And I was very particular when I was moving to urban company, that I was moving to an organization which is democratic, which is that your decision matters as a PM, if that is database, if you can defend that basically, right? So it is very hard to decide that outside the organization. The only way to do that is speak to people who are working there in those roles, and be honest and respectful to them, and try to understand more and more about the organizations when they come and speak to you, speak at the campus. Try to understand from the things that are written on in public on LinkedIn, Glassdoor, etc., etc. That is my approach to that. You would never have enough information, is what my answer is. It is a myth that you would wait for having enough information and making a decision. You would never have enough information. So, and as a PM
So
also,
the
you never
ideal
have enough
approach would
information.
be,
Sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
So the ideal approach would be like to keep trying on everything, doing everything in little bit quantity, and later on in some stage you will get the clarity when what is the right thing for you, rather
Yeah, I
than
would say
just
that
cutting on off.
not even make it
Then
as mechanical to try with. I think there is some lag. You're still speaking, and I thought you've paused. Please complete what you're saying, Arnanshu.
yeah, I was just saying that it's better to keep trying everything rather than cutting down all the options based on some uh, deceptive information. You just keep trying on different things, and slowly you will be clear about what is the way for you.
Right. So it is again, I would again like add a human element there, that a lot of us in campus placements might be driven by fear कि job चाहिए तो explore, let's explore, like if you need a job, right? So I would also add an element that what is it that interests you? Yeah? Also not try everything, like try what interests you. And like me, if you don't have a particular interest, I did not know what I wanted to do after graduating, so I tried whatever opportunity I got my hands on, and I still tried to optimize the opportunities that I was getting. So as much as you might speak to people and you might have an understanding of something, know that that understanding is based on some people's understanding of that role, right? So your understanding of product management, if you have never spoken to anyone on product management before, is based on my understanding. So if you watch a few YouTube talks about product management, if you attend a few master classes here and there on product management, if you attend a few pre-placement talks on product management from here and there, your understanding would improve, right? So as a structured thinker, right? I'm not even calling you product solver. Structured thinking will help you in life. So there is no harm in investing on this. So make sure that whatever understanding you have, you also take a note of how many people is this understanding coming from. Is it coming from a direct source who was honest with me? Is it coming from not so direct source, or like somebody who was just being professional and spoke in mystic language and was not as open? I'm not representing any organization here, so I can talk openly about that. But if you ask about an organization in a pre-placement talk, there might be some conflict of interest. If that is a senior from college, might be honest, depending upon who is with them. If you text them on LinkedIn, they might be more honest. So you've not put them on the spot. So try to also understand where is your understanding coming from. So if I say that product management is very complex, don't do it. Your life is going to be really, really tough, right? So it might actually mislead some people if I say that. I'm not saying that, but I just posed this question that it is tough and there are a bunch of these things. So make an informed choice. Make sure that whenever you're making choice, like you try to understand that how informed that choice is. And there are times that you'll just make a wild guess, which is also fine. Remember that all of these decisions are reversible. If you start off as a certain, if you start off in analytics, or if you start off as a business analyst, or if you start off as a consultant, you can still move across roles and there is no stopping you, and you don't even have to do an additional degree. A lot of people do that. Ki ab MBA karke I'll have to switch. You need to do an MBA. You don't. I'm a clean example of, like, I have never done a degree after MBA. Sorry, after college. I have learned a lot, yes, and I have learned through people also. I have learned in structured formats also by enrolling myself into whatever I found relevant, a master class, a workshop, etc., etc. But I have not done a different degree. Now, these workshops, master classes, etc., mostly do not even have certifications. So, not that I was collecting certifications to get to somewhere. No, I was building on my content, that if I get an opportunity to talk to someone, my interview at Zilingo was taken by the co-founder himself, who was running the organization, the tech organization, for a few years. And he took 3 or 4 interviews, each lasting 2.5 hours. And I was able to defend that I was not a PM earlier. He was ready to hire me for a PM role because I developed my skills accordingly, right? Not sure would I have qualified in another company if I had been interviewing for, say, Flipkart as a PM. Would they hire me or not? Probably not, right? Because they would look at the resume, they'll be like, yeah, okay, we are not, because doesn't have a product experience. So target your focus on if you're switching in the journey. So these are all reversible decisions, and like, don't be so hard on yourself in if you don't have answers yet. I'm not sure if I answered your question. If
Okay,
I
thank you so much.
even further,
Understood.
all I'm saying is that be open,
Yeah,
try
yeah, sure.
gather more and more information and make a choice. All of these choices are reversible. You might made a wrong choice, which is fine. You learn something out of that choice also. Your life might be tough for a few years if you made a very terrible choice, but it is all reversible, and you'll still look back with gratitude if you keep a growth mindset.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That's pretty much sums it up.
All right. Beautiful. Any more questions? I'm happy to answer questions. So I'll just pause here. I'm here if somebody wants to talk in a smaller group. We are already a group of 40, 50 people, I guess now. Um, I'm not sure how many people joined in earlier. There is one last thing that I want to do, and I'll get in touch with the placement committee, that please do send out a feedback form, and I'll share the feedback form. As a PM, I need feedback how the class was. I know there was a hiccup in the beginning for like quite a lot of time, but apart from that, how is the content? What part did people understand, not understand? So I'll share a survey form with you guys, and you guys can circulate. It would have been better if I did it in the class itself, but we couldn't do that today, so let it be. Uh,
Yeah, so we have
Hello, sir.
feedback
yes.
form. We'll be circulating that.
All right. Can we discuss about the feedback form before you circulate that? Might request you to make some specific questions that I would want. Uh, I'll catch up with you. There was somebody asking a question as well.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir. I had one small doubt, like how to start from scratch. Like if we invested 2, 3 years into competitive and now we want to switch due to lack, like unable to do much into that.
When you say invested into competitive, you mean by competitive programming?
Yes.
Okay. So for any reason, let's also for people who have learned programming well, and some of the people who have learned some other skills well and realize that they don't enjoy it. Remember that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it in life. Or for people who tried it and it did not work out, just because something did not work out for you doesn't mean that you can't make it somewhere else. Now, for product management, I'll answer your question in this aspect, that how do we start? This is how we start. I mean, like, just download some of these books or order them if you can get them from the bookstore. Read up a little bit. If you don't want to invest, you can just download some of these books and read an article by Dan Schmidt on product triangle, what it is. Read an article on how Swiggy Pop was built. Search on Medium about product articles. There are some nice Twitter threads that you can follow. So do a bit of research, and that is probably going to take you probably 2 hours. So if you can invest that much time and just subscribe to a few articles and subscribe to a few, follow a few YouTube, Twitter channels, etc., etc., you would start getting resources, etc., etc., and then you can start in a structured way. You can start from here, where we spoke about on these things. If you have to think about the written interviews also that the other analytics, etc., other companies use, or I think there is another thing that is used. The group discussions, right? So if you have to prepare for that also, so make a learning plan for that. Speak to somebody who's preparing for MBA, some of your friends. If not, just reach out to somebody you know is well in aptitude, etc., etc., and ask them. Talk to a few people about how to prepare for those things. And you can just start from anywhere here. Like you can start from tech side, you can start from Swipe to Unlock. I would suggest start from like first these two books and Swipe to Unlock, and get to tech when you get to like the technical side and like master the other elements before. uh, Remember, consistency helps much more than going really deep for a week and then leaving it there. So do like half an hour every day, that is fine. And you can even do it with your internships. You can even do it in if there is something else happening in your life. It is easier said than done. So if you ask me to spend half an hour every day on something today, I might even struggle with that. So I'm not saying that it's going to be easy, but start from basics, start from scratch. And you do not need to know this by October, say, right? uh, if somebody has learned it 2 years ago and you're learning it now, it doesn't make a difference if you're able to deliver it on the day of the interview. So have that growth mindset that, okay, you're learning and it's your individual journey. Every journey is different. um, the people who got placed in college when like that lady Chanchal was not getting placed are probably still struggling on the same line of career that most people started with their careers with. She has already made so many switches, and like she's more fearless about not having a job. So that matters, right? That courage matters. uh, right, so you can start from anywhere. Does that answer your question? I have this on my
Yes.
so that you
Yes.
can
Thank you so much.
where can you start from. But read apart from books, read a lot from the Medium articles, I would suggest, or the blogs of some nice reputed companies. You would get a lot better perspective on different set of varied set of problems than you would get from different case studies, because you'll probably have 10 case studies in a chapter or like in a book, while you can read a case study every day while you're reading through on the internet through Medium, etc. So all of these startups, look if they have blogs. Like if Swiggy has a blog, yes, they have. Gojek has a blog. Urban Company has a blog, etc., etc., etc. And why do they have a blog? Because they also want to attract good talent and be as transparent as they can be about what they do. So it is supposed to cater to people like you and me, right?
Yeah, so there's actually a related question to this. Please suggest some Medium accounts for product management.
Some of them I already mentioned. Follow Netflix. Follow. Um, I'll probably share with the team, check what I follow on Medium, because now I get things as recommendations. These things compound over time, right? So I've been reading up since 2017, 2016 actually. didn't start immediately after I graduated or before graduation, so started off pretty late. But I'll have to check. So I do remember reading some really nice things on Gojek, Swiggy, Urban Companies, good as well. But it is heavier on the tech side, not as much on the product side in terms of blogs. Then there are some nice blogs. Flipkart also has some blogs. Gojek has some really nice ones. Netflix has some nice ones. And then there are a bunch of people that I follow. And there are these hashtags. You can just follow hashtags, which are like the tags, which you would find that people themselves use and find relevant. So you don't even know some of these articles, and you'll start getting them in on your feed. So yeah, that's also helpful. And I'll also share probably some of the Twitter power users of who share content on product management. So whatever I have, is available for consumption by all of you. I share that. Yes, I see Vinith has raised hand. Have you asked? Do you want to ask? There are other people who have raised hands.
Yeah, actually, I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Yes. Suppose I have a idea and I want to proceed with that idea for a startup. So, is it beneficial if I already have the knowledge of different domains of business like product management, consulting, and other domains, or I can proceed currently with this idea, and later on when I get some traction, then I can stick on one domain and then learn about that domain.
It's a beautiful question. Thank you for asking that. It's a beautiful question. But unfortunately, only you can answer that question. And I don't say that to confuse you, but a Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs, they never even completed their education, right? So they found something valuable, they started doing it, they got traction, they did it. We have a lot of entrepreneurs from college as well. I remember a few people started up while they were in college itself when I was in college. Some people started up immediately after college as well. So there is no harm in starting, but a lot of people also, it depends on your circumstances. If you have responsibilities from home, would you need to, take care of a few responsibilities after you graduate, etc., etc., etc. So some people also believe that I'll make mistakes on other people's expense, which is what their code is, that they're trying to say that they will learn at other companies while they continue learning. They might make mistakes, etc., and they learn through the practices at other companies. And when they feel confident, then they'll start up and break out of that ecosystem of employment and then start up. But there is this element of idea there. Like if you already have an idea, 5 years later, it might not be an undone idea, right? So if I had an idea that I can build Facebook, but I didn't do anything about it for 3 years, and Mark Zuckerberg did it before me, there is no special marks for me just because I had the idea. So action is required there. So there are two kinds of people that I see. That one is that who have an idea and they want to pursue something, but not sure how to do it, whether I wait or start early. So that requires a deeper discussion with the different people, not just with me, like with different people. And there is another set of people who are like, I want to do something of my own, but before I do that, I want to learn something, and I want to work in different organizations so that I can pick up the best pieces and have it in my own organization. And there are another set of people who are like, I want to do something of my own, don't know what I want to do, but I just don't want other to work under any other person. And that approach works equally well if you're able to find. What you're required to do is to improve your likeliness of succeeding, and that completely depends upon you, where you are at in circumstances, ideas, etc., etc. I cannot answer that question, or nobody else can answer that question for you. Shouldn't answer that question for you, ideally. All right. Any more questions, or we'll just wrap up quickly?
Yeah, there's one question from earlier in the chat actually, because I guess you mentioned it somewhere. So the question is, how is the PM of Google different from PM of Amazon?
How is the PM of Google different from PM of Amazon? You will find this in the first few chapters of this book. But like just to, I haven't worked in any of these organizations, so whatever I'm going to share is a second-hand information, right? So just I might be completely wrong in my understanding of what I understand from there. And I'll add Facebook also there to give some and a bunch of other companies. How does different PM roles differ, right? So some companies, and I won't specify Google or Amazon there, some companies require the PM to be able to code also, so that they can build a prototype, do some early testing, etc. And once they've proven something is worth it, is when they invest the bandwidth of their tech teams there. Facebook is one of these companies. Google also requires a person to understand technology to some deeper level, if they are supposed to be in a product role, versus a Microsoft which doesn't require a person to code. Google also doesn't require a person to build prototypes as much as Facebook requires, for example. And Amazon has a set of value systems which is very important for them in hiring for any role, especially if they're hiring for product roles, which are at the core of running the company, right? So and they do not have a culture of presentations, so you have to write documents there. So they have a very defined way of working in terms of how a product manager or how any team should work. However, like any PM role is, it is also pretty ambiguous, and a PM has to find an their way there as well. How is it different from a Google or a Facebook? Well, again, I do not know the exact answers, but in my understanding, Amazon as an organization is very heavily biased on action. By that I mean that the work culture or the culture of the expectation, right, that people are expected to work for like easily 10, 12, 14 hours a day. There are a lot of people who would end up working over weekends, etc. also, and this is an acceptable culture and expected culture, versus Google, which is like if you're working for 45 hours hours a week, you're required to spend those 5 hours, or you can spend 5 hours a week on something, some 5-10% of your time on something which has nothing to do with what you're doing, and you can still do it, and Google will still pay you well. So you can do that, and you can even bring in a lot of these projects, a lot of these. The Gmail has a lot of these add-ons which is available. You can add on these things. A lot of things which have now become core features started off as pet projects of people who were just doing things for fun, right? So Google has that culture of exploration, or at least had early on. In between, something's changed and now it's a different culture, so I don't really know what exactly happens there. But and this you will find across all companies and across all roles. So that is like you'll find that in tech roles as well, and you'll find that in business roles as well, that different roles are different. And even in India, right, an Ola or a Swiggy or a Facebook, sorry, Flipkart would have different expectations from a PM or from a from a business person as well. So that is like a quick answer to that. If you want to read up in detail, definitely go for the first few chapters in this book, Cracking the PM Interview, and they do talk to people who are really working there, and you'll find first-hand accounts of information, or at least second-hand. Mine would be like third or nth-hand information. I hope that answers. There are more questions you mentioned in the chat.
No, I guess all of the else one are covered.
All right, awesome. I wish you the very, very best. I'll share these resources so that you can study on your own and keep learning. And yeah, it was beautiful. I'll keep in touch with the placement team, and I'm here at your service. All of the people, if you want to talk to me, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm not very responsive, but I do get back in my own time. And yeah, best wishes for your future endeavors, whatever you do in life. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being patient with me. Have a great evening and a great week ahead.
Thank you so much. Am I echoing?
No.
I would like to give you special thanks, Kissa, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. And I hope you liked all the sessions or everything that you shared and the interaction that we had. So we would like to have this kind of session more in future. And
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for being here. Thank you for inviting me. And a quick note and learning for myself that if I'm presenting on a new platform, test that out before. So this is my feedback for myself. Mental note taken. I'll make sure that all the tech logistics etc. are taken care of whenever I'm doing an external speaking engagement. So yeah, it's been a while. I've done that in on call. I've done that a lot in person, but yeah.
From our side too, I should have messaged you 30 minutes prior, so we are sorry on that part too.
It's like we both like missed on that, and it took me longer than to figure that out. I'm more used to Slack. Teams didn't find it as intuitive, but yeah, learnings. That is the way to go ahead, I guess. Cool. Thank you. Pay my best regards to Anil sir. Aka, right? Yeah, Anil sir, and yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, then we'll wrap up. Thank you guys for joining.